Have you ever stopped and wondered what the very first humans did when someone they loved died? I mean, before cemeteries, before religion as we know it, before anyone wrote down a single word. Did they just walk away? Did they grieve? Or did they already understand something about death that we're still trying to figure out today? When I started researching this topic, I thought the answer would be simple. Ancient humans probably treated death as a practical problem. Move the body, protect the group, survive another day. I was completely wrong. After reading archaeological research spanning nearly 500,000 years of human history, I discovered something I genuinely didn't expect. Some of the earliest evidence of humanity isn't about tools, hunting, or war. It's about grief. And by the end of this video, you'll understand not only how ancient humans treated their dead, but why those rituals may have helped shape what it means to be human in the first place. One of the oldest known human burials dates back roughly 100,000 years. In Kafse Cave in present-day Israel, archaeologists discovered the remains of a young person carefully buried with deer antlers placed beside the body. Think about that. Someone 100,000 years ago took the time to dig a grave, arrange a body, and place symbolic objects next to someone they had lost. That doesn't sound like survival. That sounds like love. Scientists still debate whether early humans truly understood death the way we do, or whether we're projecting our own emotions onto them. But here's what I didn't realize at the time. The most shocking discovery wasn't buried 100,000 years ago. It may have happened more than 430,000 years ago. And if archaeologists are right, it could completely change our understanding of when humans first began to care about death. If you're enjoying this journey into ancient history, consider subscribing. We spend a lot of time exploring questions that don't always have easy answers. Now let's go further back. Before Homo sapiens dominated the planet, there were the Neanderthals. And despite their reputation as primitive cavemen, evidence suggests they had surprisingly complex emotional lives. One of the most famous discoveries comes from Shanidar Cave in Iraq. Archaeologists uncovered the remains of a Neanderthal man who had suffered severe injuries, including a crushed eye socket and debilitating arthritis. And yet, he survived for years, which means something remarkable happened. Other Neanderthals cared for him. They protected him, fed him, helped him survive. When he eventually died around 50,000 years ago, he appears to have been deliberately buried. Researchers once believed flower pollen found around his body represented the earliest funeral flowers in history. Later studies challenged that interpretation, but the burial itself still appears intentional. And that changes everything. Because when you intentionally bury your dead, you're doing more than disposing of a body. You're creating memory. You're acknowledging loss. You're saying, in perhaps the oldest language humans ever spoke, this person mattered. Honestly, I didn't expect archaeology to affect me emotionally, but imagining a group of Neanderthals caring for an injured companion for years, that stayed with me. Then something extraordinary happened. Humans didn't just bury the dead. They started honoring them. Around 34,000 years ago, at a site called Sungir in present-day Russia, archaeologists discovered one of the most astonishing prehistoric graves ever found. 2 children had been buried with over 10,000 ivory beads, hundreds of ornaments, and spears carved from mammoth ivory. Researchers estimate those beads alone required more than 10,000 hours of labor. Think about that. An entire community invested enormous effort honoring 2 children. Not kings, not warriors. Children. Even more remarkable, evidence suggests these children may have lived with physical or developmental conditions. In other words, they were cared for during life and honored in death. What does that tell us? That compassion may have been one of humanity's greatest evolutionary strengths. I'd love to know which discovery surprised you the most so far, the Neanderthal burial or Sungir. Let me know in the comments. Honestly, I changed my mind about this topic at least 3 times while researching it. But the deeper archaeologists looked into ancient burial practices, the stranger things became. There was never just one human way of dealing with death. Take the Upper Paleolithic burials of Europe. Archaeologists discovered graves where bodies were covered almost entirely in red ochre, a pigment made from iron-rich earth. Some researchers believe it symbolized blood, or life itself. At first, I thought that interpretation sounded too poetic. Then I realized something. We still use symbols to process grief. We wear black, we bring flowers, we light candles. Maybe covering the dead in red wasn't strange at all. Maybe we're the strange ones for believing we're so different. Then came an even bigger mystery. What if ancient humans didn't simply mourn the dead? What if they believed the dead remained present? One of the most mysterious sites ever discovered is Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey. Dating back around 11,000 years, it predates Stonehenge by roughly 6,000 years. Human beings were building enormous ceremonial monuments before agriculture became widespread, before cities, before writing, before kingdoms. Some researchers believe ancestor rituals may have helped bring large groups of people together, and that raises an incredible possibility. What if civilization itself wasn't built around food? What if it was built around memory? That sounds dramatic, but the more I researched ancient funerary practices, the more plausible it became, because humans repeatedly organized enormous amounts of labor not just to survive, but to remember. A few years ago, I attended the funeral of someone I'd known most of my life. And afterward, I realized something. Many funeral rituals aren't really for the person who died. They're for the people left behind. The stories, the gathering, the shared grief, the moments of laughter that somehow still happen. At the time, I didn't fully understand why humans have always created rituals around death. Now I think I understand a little better. Rituals don't explain death. They help us survive it. And perhaps no ancient culture demonstrates this better than prehistoric Britain. Long before Stonehenge, communities built enormous burial mounds called barrows. These weren't just graves, they were places people returned to generation after generation, places to maintain relationships with the dead. That surprised me, because we tend to think of death as a moment. Ancient humans often treated it as a process, and sometimes that process lasted years. In many societies, bodies weren't buried immediately. They were exposed, cleaned, and later reburied in ceremonies archaeologists call secondary burials. At first, I found this disturbing. Then I realized my discomfort reflected my own culture, not theirs. To these communities, death unfolded over time, and perhaps grief did too. But one discovery genuinely kept me awake at night. About 7,000 years ago, some European communities created what archaeologists call skull cults. I know, that sounds terrifying, but these weren't acts of violence. They appear to have been acts of remembrance. People preserved the skulls of their ancestors, kept them nearby, and possibly used them in rituals. As strange as that sounds, I started wondering whether modern humans are really that different. After all, we keep photographs, videos, voice messages, personal belongings, entire social media accounts remain online. After someone dies, maybe we've simply created digital ancestors. And honestly, that realization made me pause. Because perhaps every civilization is trying to solve the same impossible problem. How do you stop someone from disappearing completely? And then I discovered one final piece of evidence that changed everything. In Spain's Cima de los Huesos, literally the pit of bones, researchers uncovered the remains of at least 28 ancient humans dating back around 430,000 years. 430,000 years. That's almost impossible to comprehend. If these bodies were intentionally placed there, then the roots of human mourning stretch back far beyond our own species. Long before cities, long before writing, long before recorded history, something was already happening. Something in the human mind was already struggling with death, already asking questions, already refusing to simply walk away, but ancient burial practices weren't always peaceful. At Çatalhöyük in modern-day Turkey, people buried their dead beneath the floors of their homes, literally beneath where they lived. Some homes contained dozens of burials, and in some cases, skulls were later removed, plastered, painted, and displayed. Why? Nobody knows. Maybe ancestor worship, maybe remembrance, maybe something we've yet to understand. Then, of course, there was ancient Egypt. The Egyptians didn't simply prepare for death, they organized their civilization around it. Mummification could take 70 days. Bodies were preserved. Rituals were performed. Protective texts were included. Because for Egyptians, death wasn't the end. It was a journey. When archaeologists entered Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, they discovered more than 5,000 objects buried with him. Furniture, jewelry, food, weapons, even sandals. Imagine believing so deeply in an afterlife that you pack for eternity. And here's what surprised me most. Ancient people may not have understood death less than we do. They may have understood something we've forgotten. That grief isn't a problem to solve. It's evidence that connection existed. If this journey through human history has changed the way you think about our ancestors, let me know by leaving a like. Honestly, I didn't expect this topic to affect me as much as it did. Because after spending weeks researching ancient burials, one question still bothers me. 100,000 years from now, if archaeologists discover our cemeteries, our photographs, our messages, and our digital memories, what story will they tell about us? Maybe the most important thing ancient humans did when someone died wasn't burying bodies. Maybe it was proving that humans have always loved, mourned, remembered, and searched for meaning. And maybe that's the real discovery hidden inside all these ancient graves. Not that our ancestors were different from us, but that they were far more like us than we ever imagined. So here's the question I'll leave you with. If someone uncovered the remains of our civilization thousands of years from now, what would convince them that we cared deeply about one another? In our next video, we're exploring another mystery that completely changed the way I think about ancient history. The bizarre everyday habits of prehistoric humans that sound almost impossible to believe. Because honestly, after learning all this, I'm starting to wonder if prehistoric humans understood something about being human that we're still trying to rediscover.